Hey everyone, what is going on? It's Nate Savage here, just doing some live stuff, trying it out on the YouTube and Facebook at the same time. Uh, I wanted to go over some strumming tips today, just because today the very first lesson of the new Strumming Doctor course is available. The first module is free for everyone. All you have to do is have a complimentary Guitar Fam account, and you can go through the entire first module, and that's going to be released over the next few weeks. And then over the next week. And then the next week on the 18th, the full course is going to be um, available for everyone to purchase if you want to. But the first module is free for everyone. But today's lesson that came out, the very first lesson of the first module, was all about strumming technique. And I think a lot of people, including myself, and a lot of people who have been playing guitar for a while, have trouble with certain things in strumming, like playing fast 16 note strumming patterns or getting the pick caught in the strings because they've skipped, maybe not skipped over, but not realized some tips for strumming technique that could have saved them a lot of time and energy. So I just wanted to hit those today. If you want to, go to guitarfam.com. If you don't already have a complimentary account, create a complimentary account and start going through the first module. All of those lessons are coming out this week, and you can watch the first one. And it's like a long format of what I'm going to be showing you today. But I just wanted to go through this list of guitar technique tips that have helped me over the years as far as strumming goes. And these aren't like you have to do it this way or you're not doing it right. That's not the case. These are just tips for you to watch out for and try some things to see what works best for you. And if you have any questions as you're watching here, either on YouTube or Facebook, feel free to let me know. But the first one is, well, actually, before we get into that, let's just talk about picks. People say, what kind of pick should I use to strum the guitar? The short answer is it doesn't matter. It's whatever you're used to. Now, one caveat to that is I like to recommend that people not use an ultra thin pick, just because it can make your guitar sound really clanky, and you're not getting the tone and volume that you paid for your guitar. Have a nice full tone. And if you use a really thin pick all the time, when you switch over to like a medium or a thicker pick for a different tone, it can make it really tough to keep a light grip on the pick, because when you have a super thin pick, it doesn't matter how hard you hold on to, you can death grip that thing until Jesus comes back, and it's going to be able to get through the strings. But as soon as you use a little bit of a thicker pick, you're going to have some really big problems as far as having a light grip on the pick. That's one of the tips too, is I guess I'll go ahead and say that one. This is the first one. Don't death grip the pick when you start playing. If you hold onto the pick really tight, and this is something that almost all of my newer students, when I do have private lessons, they almost all, when they strum, they're either strumming way too hard or they're holding onto their pick way too hard. And I'm like, whoa, slow down. Loosen your grip on the pick and play, start at like a moderate volume. I think guitar sounds best when you're recording it at a moderate volume. And if you lighten the grip on the pick, all of a sudden you're going to notice that it's easier to get the pick through the strings. And one area that kind of brings up, and then this will be the next tip for you for your strumming technique, is how you hold the pick. Because inevitably, if you have a light grip on the pick, really relaxed grip on a pick, you're going to have trouble holding onto it. It's going to move around. That's one of the biggest complaints I see from people all the time. And so, yeah, I'm trying to implement all these tips you give me, but the pick keeps flying out of my hands. And the simple solution to that is to say there are a couple things. Number one, as you're strumming, make little micro adjustments as you're going, because that pick's going to move around a little bit. So you have to kind of make those little micro adjustments as you go. The other thing that you can do is have your second finger, your middle finger here, either kind of supporting the pick to help kind of nudge it in place and keep it in place, or you can have a 2-finger grip on the pick, and that'll help keep things in place or keep things a little bit more stable as you have a really light grip. Because if I have a light grip, what happens, let's see if I get on both cameras. When I have a light grip, when the pick hits the strings, it gives a little bit and then it glides through. If I have a really harsh death grip on the pick, when it hits the strings, it does not move. And so the string has to move, and you get this big clanky sound. And That's an exaggeration, but not by much sometimes. So keep that in mind. Keep a really loose grip on the pick as much as possible. And if you need to, if it's moving around on you, just adjust as you strum like that, or use that second finger to either help keep it in place, kind of brace it, or use a 2 finger grip on the pick. That'll help you a lot too. The longer I play guitar, the less I rely on that 2 finger grip, and I can just it becomes easier for you as you work on this stuff to make it through like an entire 3 or 4 minute song, holding onto the pick just like that, and having a loose grip on it. One thing that does affect how easily or not easily I can hold on to the pick is the angle of attack on the strings. If I have like a neutral angle or a parallel angle to the strings, it's a little bit harder to get through the strings for me. If I go downward, slide the pick downward, it becomes a little bit easier for the pick to glide through the strings and have just a lighter grip on the pick in general. Same thing if I slant upward like this. A lot of people tend to do that. It's a little bit easier. It's a little bit easier to get the pick through the strings. So keep that in mind too. That's another technique to experiment with, keeping the pick parallel to the strings, pointing downward like this, or pointing upward like this. Let's see. And like kind of at the top of the heap of all the stuff, everything else flows down from, is just try to stay relaxed. If you tense up, what's going to happen is you're going to hold onto the pick tighter, and you're going to start strumming from your elbow a lot. And that's one of the worst things that you can do, in my experience, just because the older we get, the more we strum from just our elbow, we're opening ourselves up to tendonitis and things like that. It's my daughter in there screaming at us. Let's see. But at the pinnacle of all this stuff, all these other tips I give today, is to just stay relaxed. And I came up with this just as I was filming. If you take your hand, and this is kind of funny, if you take your hand and grab it by the skin on your wrist and just shake it back and forth like that, you end up with this kind of pendulum thing like this. And that's what you kind of want to shoot for, like almost if your hand is sticking like this, like you're turning a doorknob or a screwdriver. But the important thing is you have this motion. And when you do that, you have to be relaxed to do that, number one. And number two, you get a nice rotational movement in there. And that's going to stop you from death gripping the pick, and it's going to stop you from strumming from just your elbow. So I guess the sub tip for this one is don't strum from just your elbow. Number one, you can only strum so fast like that. So if you're strumming, your tempo is like this, and I'm strumming from my elbow that whole song, I'm going to be exhausted by the time that comes around. So instead of this, try the rotation and make sure to stay relaxed. One way you can tell if you're relaxed or not is if you're clutching your fist, right? It's not bad to have your fingers in like this. You can have them in or out, but you don't want to have a death grip on the pick. And that little analogy of, having your hand up there like this and swinging it like that is really cool, because you get this nice arc. And if you have a relaxed grip on the pick gives. And you could strum really fast like that for a long amount of time. Hey, Helen, what's going on Facebook? She says, do you find that strings not muted become more apparent when using a stronger pick? Yeah, just because in general, if you're using a thin pick, and that thin pick hits, like say on an A minor, or maybe on a D is a better example. If it accidentally hits the low E string, it's going to hit it harder, and you're going to notice it more. But it's not like that problem wasn't there before. It was still there. You're just hearing it more now. But yeah, you're right. It is, and that. But one big part of using a thicker pick is you can't grip a thicker pick as hard as you would gripping a thinner pick, because that's gonna, if I do that, like say I'm gripping a thin pick this hard, if I get a thicker pick and grip it the same amount, it's gonna be clanking all over the strings, because it doesn't matter as much how hard or how tightly you hold on to a thin pick. So that's something you have to really get aware of and get used to. As far as using a thicker pick, and you do get more tone, you get a more robust tone when you use a thicker pick, and you have more dynamic range, which is great for guitarists. But it is tougher at first, particularly on learning how to hold a pick lightly without it flying out of your hands. Right? But I like now that I'm used to it, I can hold like this is a pretty thick pick. This is like 1.2 millimeters, and I can strum pretty quiet with it. But I can feel it. It's like on the verge, just going when it's the strings, you know. And but you learn to control that and have it just on the right. Like if I dig in, play louder, I grip the pick tighter. So the tighter you grip the pick, the louder it's going to be, in general. Hey David, what's going on, man? Says I've been messing around with the position of my pick between the thumb and finger. Yeah. On acoustic, I'm pretty set for it, but on electric, I'm finding myself kind of like you said. When I play, this is hard for me. When I play electric, I tend to. I have really long thumbs, so I tend to use the pick back here, and I like the control that doing it, gripping it on just the tip of my thumb gives me. But it's really weird for me because my thumbs are so long compared to the rest of my fingers, so it's kind of a struggle. So I kind of just do the best I can. But yeah, experimenting where you're gripping the pick. Are you gripping it like this, you know, with your fist closed? Are you gripping it more like with your finger pointed to the guitar? Is the pick back here, like on the knuckle of your thumb? Is it on the tip of your thumb? All these things are going to make a difference. And so, and this is true with everything that I've said in this video so far. It's all these things are going to be different for everyone because everyone's body is different, but they are really good things to be aware of. Just so you can maybe expose some trouble areas that are holding you back in your strumming. And really, that's what the Strumming Doctor is about. It's about identifying this one huge problem area that guitar players have, looking at all the possible areas that could be affecting you, and then getting past them. It's about that, and it's about timing. The reason I did the Strumming Doctor is because the survey that we did for the Guitar Fam website members in 2021 asked people, you know, what are you struggling with most? And two of the biggest things that hadn't already been addressed were strumming and timing. So that's what I did. And let's see, do I have any more tips? I think that's two more tips. One of them is the analogy on the little social clip that went out today, and that's just pretend, in order to kind of encompass all these tips that I went over today, you can think about one little analogy and it'll take care of everything. Pretend like you have some honey on your finger, on your pinky, and there's a feather stuck to it, and pretend like you're trying to flick it off. That's exact motion you want. When I do that, my elbow is helping a little bit, but most of the motion is coming from this rotation. And you cannot do that motion unless you're relaxed. And that is the best analogy I've ever come across for strumming. And all you have to do is put your pick in your fingers and keep that motion in mind. You can't grip the pick too tight when you do that. Otherwise, you won't get the flicking motion. So you have to find the balance between holding onto the pick and keeping your arm relaxed enough to where you can flick it like that. Play loud or soft when you get that down, and you could do that for 3, 5, 7 minutes, and it doesn't get tiring when you do it like that. So, whereas if I was death gripping the pick and using mostly my elbow, it sounds labored and it sounds forced, and the dynamic range just gets lost. So all of these tips, and this is just from the first lesson of the Strumming Doctor, and this is kind of ground zero to where you have to start to be aware of all these things and find yourself and start to find your own voice as far as your technique, because this is going to set you up for all the things we'll cover later as far as dynamics, dynamic strumming tools, 16 notes, timing, all these things that are in the Strumming Doctor. And again, the first module is free. If you want to go there to guitarfan.com, sign up for your complimentary account to be able to go through the entire first module that's coming out all this week. We're releasing one lesson a day. David says, I hope Strumming Doctor covers many various rhythms. There are, it goes by the first module addresses strumming technique and timing with quarter notes, and then module 2 is eighth notes, and then it gets into eighth note strumming patterns, and then module 3 is dynamic strumming tools, which can be applied to a lot of stuff. That's a really thick module. 4 is 16 notes, so it has a lot of strumming patterns that go in with that, and then it applies all the dynamic strumming tools to that. And then number 5 gets into some kind of weirder stuff: triplet syncopation, swing fill, some funk stuff, and that type of stuff. But it's enough. It's enough. If you can play everything in the Strumming Doctor, you shouldn't have trouble listening to 95% of the stuff you hear on the radio and being able to pick it out or at least play it. But it does also go into learning how to pick out strumming patterns by ear a little bit too. Let's see. I think that's it. Oh, the last tip today. All this stuff is great and it's fun, but it's really hard to know if you're doing it right unless you have somebody to tell you, to give you feedback, or you can video yourself. That'll help. So because you might be thinking that you're doing something right, or that you're doing something and it sounds great or it looks great from here, but when you watch yourself, you'll be like, oh dear, that's not right. That's good. That's bad. I'm really tense here. Or like, yeah, the tone doesn't sound quite as good as I want it to. So video yourself, watch it back, try to listen with a constructive ear. Don't be hard on yourself or anything. Don't beat yourself up. Just like point out to yourself, hey, this is something that I can actually work on and get better at. And since strumming is so critical to playing guitar in general and playing, fun songs, it's a very important topic. The only other topic that kind of matches it is changing chords and like bar chords, but all that stuff's already covered on the site. But I digress. What else does David have to say here? David says, I've been using a thin nylon pick for the last couple of years for strumming. For the past month, I've used, let's see what he said, exclusively my electric guitar and have a lot of picking, so I've been using a harder pick. Okay. I'd be curious to know what pick you're using, David. I like to, if people are using really thin picks, usually I like to recommend that they use start off with just a 0.73. That's the standard medium pick, and you can always go up from there. Most people don't get past like a regular heavy, like a Fender heavy or something like that. Yeah, David, you're right. David says, I've had to force myself to play lighter, and it's helped. And that is the key. You have to have a light grip on the pick. Otherwise, that, and if you're doing single notes, it's just going to be like pulling teeth to try to get the pick through the strings and trying to be accurate. Helen says, what size pick do you recommend for beginner intermediate? I would just go with a straight Fender medium pick, just a regular teardrop shape. I think they're 0.73-ish millimeters. If you can use that as opposed to like the ultra light, like 0.5, 0.4, 0.6 millimeter picks, I think that's a really good place to start. And once you learn how to use that, if you want to go a little bit thicker, like a heavy, it won't be as big of a jump for you because you'll have that basic knowledge of switching from super light to like a medium. But I use